Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bearded Mystic Podcast, and I'm your host Rahul N. Singh. Thank you for taking out the time today to either watch or listen to this podcast episode. Today we will be continuing on with my thoughts on the Bhagavad Gita. And before we do begin, there's a few announcements I would like to let you know about. Please give your support to the Bearded Mystic Podcast by signing up to the podcast Patreon page for ad-free and bonus episodes and other benefits depending on the tier that you select. Details are in the show notes and video description below. Other ways to get bonus episodes is through Supercast and Buzzsprout subscriptions. Or alternatively, if you listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts streaming app, through Apple subscriptions, you can get ad-free and bonus episodes on there too. That is on the app itself. Every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, there is a free virtual meditation session along with discussion. If you would like to join, you can find the details in the show notes and video description below if you're interested in meditating. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the new series, Direct and Unfiltered with the Bearded Mystic. More information is in the show notes and video description below. Please do like, comment and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening to this podcast on your favorite podcast streaming app, please give this podcast a 5-star rating and do review the podcast. And most of all, do follow or subscribe to get future episodes. Today we will be beginning with chapter 8 and we'll be looking at verses 1 to verse 7. I'm going to read the first two verses together. Verse 1. Arjun said, O Purush Uttam, the ultimate person, what is Brahman? What is Adhyatma? What is Karma? What is Adibhuta? What is Adideva? What is Adi Yagna? Where does Adi Yagna reside within the body? How is a dedicated yogi to meditate upon Adi Yagna at the moment of the death of the body? These are some questions that Arjun has for Shri Krishna to answer, and the next couple of verses are to answer those questions. Let's discover the answers that Shri Krishna gives. Verse 3, Shri Bhagavan said, the immortal, imperishable, and always brilliant supreme reality from which everything arises and within which it exists is called Brahman. That immortal being who resides in the body is known as Adhyatma. Karma is the reaction generated by the Atma's use of free will, by which they put in motion the chains of cause and effect that manifest from life to life. So let's look at the first part of the verse. 1. The immortal, imperishable, and always brilliant supreme reality from which everything arises and within which it exists is called Brahman. So here, Shri Krishna is telling Arjun, what is Brahman? Who is Brahman? How can we relate to Brahman? And this is the ultimate answer. Now, if you want to understand that what is higher or what is the only thing, it would be Brahman. Now, let's discover this answer a bit more. This Brahman is immortal. Why? Because it doesn't change. It doesn't go through any process of modification. Therefore, it's immortal. It's also immortal because it has no beginning and it has no death. This Brahman is immortal also because it has never been born and will never die. It is imperishable because it is formless. It's not made of any substance. Therefore, it's beyond being perished. It is always brilliant because its radiance is for eternity. The radiant light of Brahman is forever. The reason why we have the ability to perceive things is due to Brahman. So that radiance is what allows us to experience all of this beauty. This Brahman does not belong to time, hence immortal. It is the most supreme reality. Nothing is before it and there is no second to it. It is the ground of existence. So of Sat Chit Ananda, it is the true Sat. the base of existence and the most supreme reality. There is no reality beyond this, nor any reality that is secondary to this. This is the most supreme reality. Maya has its reflection because of Brahman alone. Without Brahman, there is no Maya, there is no existence. So consciousness is what gives rise to existence. Without us being aware of this existence wouldn't exist. And even if it doesn't exist, we don't need to talk about it because it doesn't exist. So we have to understand that this Maya, this reflected consciousness, is there because of consciousness. So this Brahman is within the whole of existence in a constant state of oneness. So don't see Brahman as something separate, but it's something infused within life, infused within existence. Everywhere you look, everything you see, perceive, hear, taste, smell, everything is of the essence of Brahman. Do not feel that Brahman is something separate to life. It literally is life itself. Then Shri Krishna says, that immortal being who resides in the body is known as Adhyatma. So some people may recall this as a Jeev, but basically this Adhyatma is that witness consciousness within us, that eternal consciousness within us, that continuous observer within us, that observer that does not change. And as I mentioned, we may consider this to be the Jeev because it's the Jeev that goes from one life form to another, but also it's what we are. And this Jeev is none other than Brahman. Then Shri Krishna answers the question about karma. So he says, karma is the reaction generated by the Atma's use of free will, by which they put in motion the chains of cause and effect that manifest from life to life. Shri Krishna here explains karma very simply. There's no complication in this. It's very, very simple. The reaction of any action we do is generated by the mind's use of free will. We are given the free will to act the way we want to. In one way, the choices of action may be restricted. However, we will choose through our discernment what action to take. Hence, it becomes our karma. Now, the mind perceives that it has free will. So we have to understand this. It is the mind that believes that it has free will, perceives that it has free will. Therefore, it makes the choices. Although there is an awareness behind those choices that are made. Now, due to it thinking that it's the doer, it sets the motion of cause and effect. So the moment you think this body and mind is the doer of all actions, that is when you will then accumulate all that karma. But if you say that you are not the doer, and actually the doer is Brahman itself, what happens then is the doer changes. We become the non-doer, the body and mind, and the doer becomes Brahman. And that way, what happens is we end up doing selfless service because we do not want anything in return. These reactions go from one life to the next. It's these actions which carry on from one lifetime to another. These are stored up in the Jeev or in the Adhyatma. So whatever we do will have an effect. Maybe not in this life, but it may have an effect in the next life. And certainly we can observe in our own lives now, certain things that happen to us which makes no sense. There's no reason for those things to happen. In Vedanta, what it says is very simple. This has come from the Jeev, this is karma from your past life. Now you can actually untie that knot and get rid of that karma by just being the observer and not reacting towards it. And if there is a reaction, it's a reaction that benefits many rather than becoming a hindrance or becoming suffering for others or for the many. Karma, as I mentioned, is generated because we think we are the body and mind. The moment we understand that we are the Jeev, that we are the Atma, there will be no sticking of doership. That doership is not, for example, even though we may say that Brahman does everything, that Brahman does not become the I am the doer, even then, because all you do is remain as a witness consciousness. So the context of the whole verse is that Shri Krishna is answering the first three questions of what is Brahman, what is Adhyatma, and what is karma. So remember essentially that Brahman is that supreme ultimate reality that is immortal, that does not change in any way. It's within everything that exists, and therefore everywhere we look, everywhere we go, it is an act of worship towards the divine. Likewise, we need to know that the immortal being within the body is the Adhyatma, the Jeev, and that it is karma that has been created from many lives that is stored up in the Jeev, and the Jeev's primary goal is to address those issues and be free from them, and that is called Jivan Mukti. Verse 4, Adibhuta is the totality of Prakriti, the realm of matter, functioning as a single cosmic being whose body is the entire universe. Adideva is the supreme being who is pervading the entire universe. Adiyagna is me, present in the Hridaya, the heart of every living being, from where I receive all offerings of love and adoration. Let's break this verse up very quickly. Adibhuta is the totality of Prakriti, the realm of matter, functioning as a single cosmic being whose body is the entire universe. When we see the whole universe or manifestation, we can see it as the shared being or the ground of existence, and that is called Adibhuta. That is the totality of Prakriti, the totality of the universe. And that single cosmic being, we can even call that Saguna Brahman or Ishvara. Really is up to us how we want to refer that to. So the important thing here is to see that there is oneness in nature. There is not a duality in nature. So although there is diversity, there is a single thread of unity within it all. That is ultimately the way we are meant to look at this. The next part, Adideva is the supreme being who is pervading the entire universe. The subtle energy that pervades the entire universe is the Adideva. That is the supreme being. So again, it's very similar to the Saguna Brahman, Ishvara, or the personal God. We can see that as the Adideva, the first being, so to speak. And Adi Yagna is me, present in the Hridaya, the heart of every living being, from where I receive all offerings of love and adoration. So Adi Yagna is Brahman that is present in the heart of everyone. So remember, the Adhyatma is within everyone. The Jeev is within everyone. Therefore, any offering you give to others, any help you offer to others, any time that you're there for others, that is Adi Yagna. When you devote every action to Brahman, that is Adi Yagna. When you see Brahman in the heart of everyone, automatically that feeling of love and devotion arises where you want to serve others, and you're kind, you're nice, you're pleasant to be around. People want to be around you. Nobody has any issues about who you are as a person. Your behavior is, completely on par with the scriptures. This is the point. Remember, on our podcast, what we discuss here is how there has to be a synchronicity between the teachings and your life. If you're just looking at these as teachings that are just meant to be put up as a poster or something to just memorize and discuss, that is not where it ends. The true discussion, the true understanding occurs when we fully implement it into our lives. So these values that are there within each and every one of us, within each and every heart, has to be explored, and we have to always be in the remembrance of this one. And therefore we have to understand that our behavior has to reflect this one. Now, every prayer uttered from the heart goes to the same heart where Brahman is. So there's no separation here. We're not praying to some other entity. You're praying to Brahman itself. It's kind of like Brahman praying to Brahman. It literally is that type of thing. But what we have to understand here is that we have to have compassion. We have to have empathy. This is the number one thing to understand from these verses. And this Adi Yagna is always available, always present. Therefore, always offer whatever you can to the divine. Well, what I mean by that is not money or material things. I'm on about your feelings, your remembrance, your thinking. Devote as much as possible towards Brahman. the context of the whole verse is that Shri Krishna guides how Brahman is infused within nature, yet it is all one cosmic wholeness, one cosmic oneness. Then verse 5, and at the final moment of leaving the body, anyone who remembers only me is removed from the process of reincarnation and achieves moksha. They are reinstated in their original nature, like my own, and come to live in my Brahman abode. Of this, there is no doubt. So we're going to look at the whole verse altogether because it's a pretty epic verse. First of all, we have to establish here that this requires incredible practice. Do not expect it to be easy. Do not expect that, oh, just because you listened to this podcast or you've taken that wisdom of the divine, that now suddenly you will be fine. No. Or you have complete faith. Even that's not going to be enough, because the one thing which we all fear is death. Now, how can we conquer that fear is the question. So the one thing to do here, especially when we are about to leave the body, is to ensure that our vivek is strong, our discernment is strong between the real and the unreal. This has to be concrete. This has to be firmly established. Do not take my words lightly here. You have to be completely strong, completely convinced that the only reality is Brahman, that there is only formless awareness. You have to be really convinced. So our discernment has to be fully utilized. It has to be fully concrete in the real. It is a must that our intellect and instinct have fully immersed themselves into Brahman. So our intellect and instinct has to be transcended into that divine intelligence which is always here. That divine intelligence which transcends the intellect and instinct. Instinct we can say we've transcended. How do we transcend the intellect? This again is through discernment of the real and the unreal, of Sat and Asat. But another way is when we read the scriptures, and instead of just answering it intellectually, we need to get to that point where we exhaust the intellect and have to transcend. So this is a must. For example, the way to do that is read a Zen koan, read poetry by Kabirji, or read any text, read a line from the Bhagavad Gita. These things will help you transcend the intellect. When it comes to the final breath, what do we remember? Our true self or everything related to the body and mind? What is it that we need to remember? What is it that we need to be in touch with? Do we go back to the subject of consciousness, of formless awareness, or do we go back to the objects of formless awareness, of consciousness? Sri Krishna is very clear that whoever remembers this formless awareness attains moksha mukti. He's guaranteeing it here. He says, anyone who remembers only me, remember that me means Brahman, Nirgun Brahman, the formless awareness, is removed from the process of reincarnation and achieves moksha. So all these weird doctrines that have been created by people like ISKCON that say you will go to Vrindavan. This verse debunks all their claims, because it's right here that Shri Krishna talks about freedom, moksha, mukti. So Shri Krishna is confirming here that they are removed from the process of reincarnation. They are not going to come back onto this earth. They're not going to come back into this universe. In fact, they understand that their shared being is the universe. There has been no separation from the very beginning, if there was a beginning. So they've completely removed the ignorance. They no longer see themselves as an object of consciousness, or that they are this body and mind. They understand that they are the subject. They are formless awareness. They are pure consciousness. They are aware of all this. Now, someone may say, well, what about bad people? What about if they, at the last breath, they remember Brahman? What happens to them? Are they also going to achieve liberation? Are they going to achieve mukti? Freedom? Will their process of reincarnation end? No. If you remember, someone's intellect has to be strengthened in this. If one is committing acts of suffering, meaning acts that cause suffering, pap, there is no way that person is going to get mukti. No way. Will they remember Brahman at the last minute? I highly doubt that. If it's difficult for people to remember Brahman in the waking state, how are they going to remember Brahman at the final breath? The one thing they'd be thinking about is maybe the issues they've created, or what they were not able to achieve because they wanted others to suffer. And that suffering never happened. These are the things that we have to think about. You know, some people try to be smart and say, well, does this mean that if you're an absolute horrible person, you will get mukti if you think of Brahman at the last minute? I'm saying it's impossible that they will think of Brahman at the last minute. It just will not happen. Only those people who are good, who have been practicing this message, who have been discerning completely, who have made their vivek strong, only they will attain mukti. And they are reinstated in their original nature, meaning that the Jeev realizes it's Brahman. That ignorance is removed completely, that they are something separate. Jiva Brahmeva na apara. Yeah, the Jeev and Brahman is one and the same. They enter the same original nature that Sri Krishna is, and they live in that Brahman as that Brahman. Remember, Sri Krishna is Brahman. There's no difference between the two. They are one. Many people think Krishna is a body and mind, hence they fail to understand the Bhagavad Gita. You understand that Sri Krishna is formless awareness, is Nirgun Brahman. Hence, you know that you will enter the same original nature. Again, this is a line, this is a verse that goes against everything that ISKCON and all the people that believe in that type of philosophy are completely wrong in their interpretation of this. Whether that purpose they have serves something, I'm not saying, I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying that this verse, these lines, tells you that you will attain the same original nature as Krishna. You are one and the same as Krishna. And that you were always living in Brahman as Brahman, but now you understand this completely because you've completely made sure that any time could be your last breath, and you are to be in the remembrance of Brahman at all times. All you do is think of Brahman. You commit to your daily activities, you live a very normal life, but in the back of the mind, there is a constant remembrance of Brahman. In the center of the heart, there is a constant remembrance of Brahman. You're always doing this. So Shri Krishna states there is no doubt about this. It is certain. So do not think that this is 1% chance. This is 100%. Shri Krishna is giving his guarantee to you. So enjoy that guarantee. Take in that guarantee. The context of the whole verse is that Shri Krishna guides us on how important it is to train spiritually so that at the time of death we remember Brahman. So remember, from now until the last breath, this is our training. Remember Brahman as much as possible. And if you're in that remembrance, remember your virtues, your deeds will represent that. Remember that. Verse 6. Whatever state of being one envisions through smaranam, remembrance at the time of leaving their body determines their next state of being and the destination to which they will be transported for their next birth. So what if somebody does not remember Brahman at the last breath? What if somebody has not trained their Vivek as much? What happens to them? This is what Shri Krishna is talking about. So whatever state you are in, so you become. If you remember Brahman, you become Brahman. If you remember formless awareness, you become formless awareness. If you think you are the body and mind, you will enter another body and mind. If you think you are a deva, you will enter a deva. So whatever state you're in, so you become. Whatever you think you are, so you become. Whatever you worry about, you will come back to resolve this very issue. If you have attachment, you will come back onto this earth to resolve those attachments. Therefore, for a Jnani Bhagat, we have to always be in the remembrance of formless awareness. We have no other choice. On this podcast, that's what we focus on. Not everyone will have time to prepare for death. So we have to make Brahman our very own nature. We can't make it something else. We can't make it as an add-on. We have to make it the subject, the complete software. So we have to completely embody Brahman. Whatever our last thought is, will determine the next state of being. This is the reaction emanating from karma. So remember that any movement, whether that's thought or through this physical body, remember that will determine everything. Make sure our actions are pure, our thoughts are pure, we are caring for others, loving towards others, kind towards others. We are thinking more of doing punya activities rather than pap activities. Those are the things we need to consider. Or, alternatively, devote everything as a yagna to the divine. Very simple, a simple remembrance to do. Be wise and strengthen your intellect, as your next life or your transcendence depends on it. And this is very true. Now you've listened to this, you cannot turn around and say you've not been told. You know what the expectation is. You know what you need to do. Stabilize yourself in Brahman and remember Brahman at all times. That's all you have to do. Be completely still in Brahman. Be completely connected in Brahman. Do not look anywhere else, because there is no anywhere else. There is only Brahman. There's only formless awareness. So the context of the whole verse is that Shri Krishna instructs us on what to remember at the time of death, and so we must remain in the awareness of formless awareness. Then verse 7. Therefore, always remember me through yogic smaranam. With your manas and buddhi completely focused upon me, fight on behalf of dharma, acting for the well-being of all. In this way, you will come to me without a doubt. So the first part of the verse is, therefore, always remember me through yogic smaranam. Yogic smaranam is basically remaining in awareness of formless awareness. This we must do at all times. This we do not have a choice about. As Shri Krishna says, always remember. So there's no condition here of mostly remember, do a bit today, do a bit tomorrow. No, always remember. Now, what does it mean by yogic smaranam? That union, how do we do that? Well, every act that you have, every thought that you have, just have that formless awareness in the background. Do everything you need to do in life, but remember Brahman in the background. That's all you have to do. You have a thought. At the end of having a thought, remember Brahman. After you complete an action, remember Brahman. That's all you have to do. The last thing you do before you go to bed, remember Brahman. First thing you remember when you wake up, remember Brahman. That is yogic smaranam. That's all. Just be in continuous awareness. Then the second part of the verse is, with your manas and buddhi completely focused upon me, fight on behalf of dharma, acting for the well-being of all. In this way, you will come to me without a doubt. With the mind heart, with the intellect, we must be completely focused on Brahman. So that's understood. Formless awareness has to be the complete focus. On behalf of Dharma, meaning for our moksha. Dharma does not mean fighting for a religion or a religious identity. Only fools think that way. That's just like one tiny part. One tiny part. The complete aspect is that every action we do is for our mukti, for our liberation. That is the real result. If we're still coming back on this earth, that means we've not completed what we were meant to do. You want to fight for Dharma? You want to get rid of Hindu phobia? Show your liberation. Show your Jivan Mukti. That is the way. You want to show that our religion has the way out through the way in? Show them. Instead, what we're doing is just talking points, going on social media and just talking about all this without doing any of the sadhana. So that's what we need to understand. Every action we do must be for the well-being of all. It has to support everyone. Think of what we're supporting. Think of what we're doing. Is it there for everybody? Every action we do, are we thinking about the well-being of all? Or is it just for the well-being of our community? Of our people? Or are we thinking about everybody? Even those that dislike us? Are we even thinking on that level? That's the thing we have to think about. So it has to support everyone. It has to. Dharma is not cultural, but the very base of our spiritual understanding. Understand this to be Dharma. Anyone who's just dharmic by name and form is not dharmic at all. When Sri Krishna says fight on behalf of Dharma, fight on the base of your freedom. If you're fighting based on some identity that you have, you're restricted. Your vision is blurry, limited, short-sighted. Expand your vision, expand the vastness. Experience the vastness and understand that Dharma is freedom. When you're free from everything that restricts human beings to this Prakriti. Transcend Prakriti. So anything you are aware of is Prakriti. Nature. Transcend it. Like I said, anyone can label themselves dharmic. Show your dharma through your very being. And nothing can threaten someone who is established in dharma. No one can even move a single hair in their body. There is that much conviction. There is that much strength. That person is undefeatable. That person is invincible. That person who is always thinking of everyone, who is always for freedom. And nor does Dharma threaten or fight back unnecessarily. If you're in freedom, you will not threaten people, threaten other groups. Neither will you fight back unnecessarily. Why would you? There's no need to. So for Dharma to win, we have to win over our mind and intellect and establish it in Brahman. Simple as that. This is the way to moksha. This is the way to freedom, to liberation, to Jivan Mukti. This is what we have to do. This is the expectation. This is what Sri Krishna means when he says fight for Dharma. not some other concocted, weird explanation or interpretation to support our ignorance. Understand what Sri Krishna is and then understand his vision. So we will be one with Brahman. There is no doubt about this. But what we need to do is understand that if there is only Brahman and you're fighting for a limited identity, that shows your limitation and that you've not expanded beyond Prakriti. You are that witness consciousness, that vast, immense quality of Brahman. You are that, so be that. The context of the whole verse is that Sri Krishna tells us how it is important to have the mind, heart, and intellect established in awareness, as this is the strength of Dharma. So that is the end of the episode. Please share this podcast with your friends and family who may enjoy this content. Do follow me on social media to keep getting updates. Join the Bearded Mystic WhatsApp community group to continue the podcast discussion. Details are in the show notes and video description below. If you would like to support the Bearded Mystic podcast, do check out the podcast Patreon page. Details are in the show notes and video description below. Please do give this podcast a 5-star rating and review the podcast on your favorite podcast streaming app or on www.thebeardedmysticpodcast.com. Please do like and comment on this video and subscribe to this YouTube channel, and please follow or subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast streaming app. Thank you very much for listening. Let's end this with the Soham and Shanti mantra. Soham, Soham, I am that, I am that. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Peace, Peace, Peace. Namaste.